my friends, welcome back to the Research to Empower Masterclass series. I'm Grace Liu, joined by my sister Jessica. We're talking about research in a way that's easy to digest and fun. Today, we are continuing the last episode's topic of data to talk about data analysis.
What is data analysis?
That's a good question. So it's basically a process, and this process involves gathering, structuring, and interpreting qualitative or quantitative data. And the reason why we need to interpret it and understand what it means is because of the central goal of our research, which is to answer our research question. So the point of data analysis is to see how your data, your results of your research, relate to your research questions and hypotheses.
How do you do it? Are there different ways between quantitative and qualitative?
Yep, let's start with qualitative. So after cleaning the data set, your task is to uncover insights. And by data set, I mean what we literally talked about last episode, which is the data that you have just collected and you cleaned it up, so that means that you deleted like blank spaces or just random answers, stuff like that. So after you have a nice complete data set that you are finalized and you want to use, you now want to scour through the data that you have and look at if there are patterns that emerge from the data. And you want to draw meaningful correlations from these patterns, because these patterns, you want to see how they can possibly explain your research question or whether or not they support your hypothesis. And this is a lot about explaining how the data you found, how the evidence that you found is relevant to your intuition, your research questions, and also why this data is significant or insignificant. So this part and analyzing qualitative data often has a lot to do with writing and analyzing and reading. So again, it's all about answering your research question, which is the heart of your research, like I've said a bajillion times.
What about quantitative data analysis then?
Alrighty, so we just talked about qualitative, now quantitative includes a lot of things. So I'm going to try my best to keep it general, but also specific enough for you to use. So usually quantitative research methodology and how you analyze data includes tools and softwares and stuff such as Microsoft Excel, Stata, R, which is a programming language, and Python, which is also another programming language. So these tools can have a learning curve that can kind of be a little bit steep though, which means that it takes quite a lot of time to learn and be comfortable with using them. And that's a big difference between quantitative and qualitative data analysis, because with qualitative data analysis, usually you can just read and write about what you just found. But with quantitative, you want to know how to deal with the data that you found. And that's oftentimes the brunt of the work, which is learning how to use the tools properly. So unfortunately, I can't provide detailed how-tos for each one of the tools because that would take literally forever, and some of you may not even be interested in using it. So what I will tell you though is that there, first of all, are many textbooks on that explain comprehensively and are very detailed about how to learn them. But also, if you don't have access to textbooks, that's totally okay, because I want to talk about now how to learn these technical things. And I'll talk about this in 4 chunks. The first chunk is I'm going to talk about YouTube. So YouTube has a lot of awesome tutorials. How many times have you seen a tutorial on YouTube, Jessica?
A lot of times.
How oftentimes do you use those tutorials?
not a lot.
Why not?
Because I like to have my own tutorials in my brain. I don't really trust the internet because Joe Schmo could be anywhere.
Are we really back with Joe Schmo again?
Yeah.
I feel like it's so overused. And many people find those YouTube tutorials helpful. I mean, why else would they have millions of views? But to stay back on topic, basically, YouTube, you can literally just search it up. It's simple enough. And if you have an hour or a couple of hours to spare, usually the video goes through thoroughly the entirety of the program or software that you're using. I mean, if you see videos that say, learn Excel in 30 minutes or master Python in 2 hours, usually that's kind of what you're looking for because most of the time we're on a bit of a time crunch. So instead of spending like weeks, you could just cram it all into one day. So a pro of this is that it's fast and it's usually pretty systematic. And then a con of it though is that personally, I think that it's a bit of a passive way to learn, right? Like you're just watching a YouTube video. I don't really know how much of it you can retain. I'm sure there are some people who make it really engaging and ask you to like try it along with them. I feel like that's much more interesting, but it also takes a lot more time because you're doing all these little activities. You have to pause the video and then resume the video, and it's just the whole spiel. So another con is that you may not necessarily learn how to apply it to your research, right? You might learn everything and then you have these little activities that you did and exercises that you, for example, like entered some random numbers onto Excel and then you're just playing around with it, and at the end you're a bit more familiar with Excel, but you don't really know what to do next. Or you learn a lot of stuff through these videos, but you might not necessarily really need it for research. Like, you don't need to know necessarily every single little thing or every single little formula on Microsoft Excel. You don't need to be like memorizing every single command in like Python and that kind of stuff. So I think that these YouTube videos, again, I'm just giving like some suggestions and some different ways that you can approach this based on your circumstances and your preferences. So what I will say, because I do use these YouTube videos sometimes, because they can be very helpful at times as a reference and just to have their having like a resource list that you can refer back to on like a Google Doc or a Word document or something like that, and then taking notes along the way and keeping track of what can be really useful for your research, that can be a little bit more helpful. So that's just the whole first chunk that I want to talk about, which are YouTube tutorials. And also, like, even if you find like a blog article that's really, really long and has everything that is kind of under a similar category. So the second chunk that I want to talk about is what I like to do personally, and that's learning by doing. I feel like I always go back to this a lot because it's kind of a part of like active learning, I guess. You maybe just start with a short introduction video to the software or tool that you're trying to use, and then think carefully about what you want to do, which is back to why you need to design your research methodology, right? So, and then you just start. And if you hit a wall, then consult the blog articles and Google and YouTube and videos and stuff. The pro or benefit for this is that you get your research done along the way. So at the end of the day, you got more of your research done, and it's not just like you learn it and then you don't have any of your research done, but you've learned something new, which is still valuable. But if you want to get your research done fast, then this might be a better way. Of course, there are negatives or cons to this, and that's, you might have guessed it, that it's not systematic, right? Like, if you're just throwing up bits and pieces of how to do this and how to do that there, you can't really call yourself a master at the end of the day of Excel or Python or R.
Yep.
And then your knowledge is more limited to your research specific, which can be useful, again, but you would have to learn more along the way, and it takes a little bit more time if you're starting a new project and you want to use it. Alrighty, now on to the third chunk, which is to take a course on platforms like Coursera, Udemy, Skillshare, edX, etc. There are so many platforms out there and they have so many courses. It's just crazy sometimes how much you can learn for free online nowadays. It's like college level courses that you can already access online. Like, how crazy is that?
I know, right?
It's really can save you like a ton of money and time even, because like one semester of college is a long time.
Yep.
Anyway, so taking a course on that, I just got to kind of like the pros and benefits of that is maybe you can even, usually they want you to like pay a little bit, but then you can have like a proper certificate and earn some possibly even college credits, which are super cool. And usually they're also super systematic, taught by experts, professors, super reliable. A not so great part of this is that it takes a long time. Usually these courses last many weeks, maybe even months. So the fourth and final chunk for today's episode is my final tip, which is working in a scientific lab, which if you're interested in, then this might be the way to go for you. If you're already in a scientific lab, then that's amazing. Kudos to you. So with scientific labs, you would usually be supervised by a mentor who can teach you the tools, methodology, and how to analyze data. So they'll be there step by step along the way. And the pro of this, the benefit, is that it's super duper applicable to your research, kind of like the method where you're learning by doing, but learning by doing is kind of like you on your own and you trying to figure it out along the way. With labs, it's also personalized to your research, but it may be more systematic and reliable because you have someone to correct.
Can you summarize the key things for today?
Of course, there is a con, and that it's harder to get into a research lab. Like, a lot of the times these research labs are so selective, and the information that they teach there is not open source. It's not public information for you to access. So it's also up to you to make sure you're on top of your work. You have a comprehensive like research notebook that you're keeping, and you make the most out of this wonderful opportunity if you do get into a research lab, which I believe you can do it. If you're listening to this episode and this masterclass in general, then you're already one step closer, or maybe even multiple steps closer to your dream and your research project. That leads me to my closing question for this episode, which is, how will you approach analyzing data? Will you take the qualitative or quantitative route, or a mix of both? That's it for today. Thank you for listening. If you want to check out details about stuff we reference, it's available in the show notes. Head over to research2empower.org to submit your response to the question for this episode and complete the masterclass along the way. Tune in to the next episode to finally unlock the secrets of writing a full-length research paper. Can we believe it, Jessica? We've gotten this far.
Wow.